Fire away.
Hi, thank you. This is an amazing panel. So your conversation sparked for me a recent conversation I had with a relative who is in a completely different information universe than I am. So we talk about these as facts and we understand what's going on, and this person was in complete denial. And an example I'll give is, there was a Supreme Court ruling that Stephen Miller said went 9-0 their way, and the outlets I read said it was 9-0 the other way. This was on immigration. Do you have any ideas of how we can pierce that divide? Because this person was not seeing it at all. Like, they totally believe that Trump is protecting Social Security and that the things that we're talking about are overblown. She's sure there wouldn't be any problems. So I'm just trying to figure out how to have those conversations in a way that someone will listen, because she flat out told me I was wrong.
If I may ask, what television network does she watch?
It has 3 letters.
It begins with an F. Begins with an F.
I'm assuming. Begins with an F.
Well, thank you for the question. And panelist, who wants to take it?
Yeah, okay, so again, what Jason, right? Yeah, I only see him once a year, so I got to remember his name. So Jason said this is an opportunity at this point in time as to how we try to explain to all those that we love, like your family member, what the Older Americans Act, the spirit of it was about, and what the Older Americans Act funds. Because those of us in aging service delivery systems, we have an opportunity now to explain what we do to the older adults in this country. Because I don't think they understand, like Allison Barkoff was talking about yesterday. They don't know what ACL means. They don't know what that stands for. Now, if you talk to an older adult, if you talk to them about Meals on Wheels or a home delivered meal, they'll be like, oh, yeah. Wait, they don't ask where that comes from now. But I think we need to start connecting the dots to explain it. And to me, at this end of the world, it's like, why argue? Just say, oh, that's an interesting view. But oh, by the way, did you know that the senior center is going to close if this doesn't get funded? I mean, I don't know. That's right. You all know. It's like so frustrating.
I agree, though. We have to connect the dots. We've got to meet people where they are, engage them, listen to their stories. Everyone has a story about their own aging experience, the aging experience of a loved one, and we engage and listen to those stories, and then we punctuate the points that are critical to policy and programs. So as we're listening to the story, being able to tease out the policies and the programs that make that lifestyle or make that experience possible, that's a part of the education. But also, as my glass starts to dwindle a bit and it's a little less than half full, I think until people feel the pain, when the check does not get deposited, only then will they feel it, and they will feel it. And that anger needs to be harnessed. We need to be there for them, and we need to point them in the right direction to share that rage and frustration.
On top of all of that, I think those are fantastic answers. I think we need to really come to terms with the fact that a lot of these people are in a cult. And people who are much smarter than I have done decades worth of research as to how to deprogram people from cults. I think connecting the dots is important. Making it plain is important, but we need to tap into that research, tap into what is proven to get people out of cults, and we need to utilize those same tactics.
And I would just add on top of that, one, I think, it seems, and I could sense from your question, like it's frustrating, and is it worth even doing? And I would say yes, right? Sort of continue to have that conversation. Don't shy away from it, even though it can be frustrating, even though you might come away without changing a mind. I still think engaging is worth it. And then on top of that, I do think there are some conservative voices that we can uplift right now. who maybe you are not the right messenger, but there are folks out there, because so many of these issues are bipartisan, whether it's caregiving, which is extremely common ground, even on Medicaid. In this past week, we've heard Josh Hawley be one of the loudest advocates in support of the Medicaid program. And now, is that because of some sort of enlightened moment? Maybe, but also it's because the state has a constitutional amendment protecting the Medicaid program, but that's still a conservative voice talking about the importance of this program. You have Ann Coulter, one of the most conservative voices out there, talking about some of the illegalities of the administration's immigration policies. Worth uplifting. So I think it's that combination of engaging in the conversation and then widening even in our apertures for other voices that we can leverage to make our arguments.
And the other thing I would just toss out too is if you have access to the AP wire, there's the AP that's been banned by the White House temporarily, or they have it sitting in the kids' table or something. I forget what they do with them. But AP wire stories usually the most accurate. Yes, Nadine, go ahead.
Oh, I was gonna add on to, not
Please.
stop you. Oh,
Right
okay,
ahead.
all right. So here's the thing about cults. Nobody knows they're in a cult when they're in a cult. And the worst way to get somebody out of a cult is to tell them they're in a cult. But with that being said, the things that we know about how to reach people, number one, being in person makes a huge, huge difference. It's almost like road rage. The way we will behave behind our computer screen versus how we'll behave in person are very different. You will not win by starting with facts. You have to start with values and get people anchored in that. And sometimes it's about saying, what would it take for you to believe this? And then they begin to construct the circumstances of their own pathway out, and they won't feel as though you've placed it upon them. Like what? Well, if the senior center told me that X, Y, and Z was happening, that kind of thing. Be curious, ask more than argue. Really, where did you hear that? What's the source of that? Just anything that gets people's back up instead of getting them to think more deeply. But also be strategic with sources, like don't bring them MSNBC, but maybe Forbes, maybe something that leans conservative, middle of the road kind of thing. And tell stories, don't rely on stats, they don't believe stats. But if you can engage long enough and help them create their own breadcrumbs, then something will shift. There are farmers that are abandoning this administration because they are dealing with the reality of cutting off U.S. aid funding and going back on policies during the Biden years that delivered resources. And so they're walking themselves out, not being dragged out. And condescension will never get the job done. That's what this panel is for.